It's starting.
And we're live. Hey, everybody, this is Bad Philosophy. I'm Kevin, your host. Welcome to episode 165, yet to be titled.
Hey, wait, is that his face? I think that's his face.
You appreciate my lower third, I can tell.
It's good. It's a big upgrade from the last one.
What did the last one say? I don't even remember.
I think it said lower third.
Oh, that's clever too. I'm really good at this. I'm really good at coming up with good lower thirds. Good job, Kevin.
So what are we doing today?
Let's start for real, maybe. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is Bad Philosophy, and I'm Kevin Saunders, your host. I'm here with Stephen Torrence and Anna, whose last name I'm not good enough at a person to remember. So, hi Anna, and hi Stephen. And here we are. Someone made me the host, and it was a bad idea, but here we are. We are live first and foremost. So everybody who's watching us on YouTube, congrats. Is there anybody watching us on YouTube? How do I tell?
We have one viewer. I don't know.
Cool.
That's probably your mom.
Either my mom or Matthew Epperson. Both of those are strong possibilities. It could be either my mother or Matthew Epperson, both of whom who said that they are likely to be watching. Cool. Huertas, I just found your last name, Anna. Anna Huertas is joining us live on the YouTubes.
Good.
I've been told I have a pretty good Spanish accent. Like all of my Spanish teachers in college told me that. I don't know what I'm saying, but I can pronounce it pretty well.
It's a start.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing. It is February 14th, 2016. Which, as some of you may know, is Valentine's Day, and it is the 138th Valentine's Day since the beginning of time. I just made that up. That's not in any way true. I don't know when the first Valentine's Day was. This is what you get for putting me in charge.
Well,
but no, we are here to talk about Valentine's Day, which is like that fact just made up. It's not a real thing.
Not a real thing. We actually did some research for this episode.
Yes. Good job, us.
Yeah. Which, if we don't get to all of the research in the actual show, we'll provide it, of course, in the show notes. But we're actually curious about this thing that we do every February 14th. That I think we talked on the show before about as like Singles Awareness Day.
Yeah, we had Cheap Chocolate Eve was the name of one of our episodes that I was not on, not listened to because I don't think I was single at the time, and y'all were like, no coupled people on the show for Valentine's Day because science.
Right, because we were all single and feeling left out and lonely and everything. So now there are no.
I'm pretty sure I was making eggplant parmesan for that night, which I made. It was the first time I made an entirely vegetarian dish to prove a point, and I did. So good job, Kevin. That I could make a vegetarian dish.
Good job. Way to go there. Way to go there, buddy. Yeah. Congratulations. What are you? How are you celebrating or not celebrating this Valentine's Day? Are you going to do the traditional thing and give someone flowers? Are you going to give them chocolate?
Although I have a funny anecdote about that later. Amy and I made brownies, and we will be continuing to eat those brownies. We started last night because why not get a head start? And we might go see Spotlight, the movie about the uncovering of the sex scandal in the Catholic Church. Because that's romantic.
Extremely.
It's not. It's just a movie we want to see, and we might go see that this afternoon. And for dinner, we will probably eat food.
Okay, that's wow.
Yeah, we've never been a couple that is particularly romantic in the traditional sense, nor are we by any stretch of the imagination the kind that like give flowers or Valentine's Day gifts. Although I did one year buy Amy a dozen rosés. I bought her 12 tiny little bottles of pink wine and put them in a vase and thought that was really clever.
What did she think of that?
She thought it was really clever as well and put it on the internet, so I know it worked out okay.
You're a keeper, man.
I know.
I
I'd
hope you're
keep me.
taking notes.
Well, I suspect it was a better gift than, as we're going to talk about, A Dozen Roses, which, as I learned recently from some of the things we've read, are not so ethically sourced. Might be a way I'd put that.
So it's this tradition, right? That which maybe we should go into a little bit of,
Sure.
like, where the hell did this come from as a holiday?
That's a good question.
And
I love it.
Anna enlightened me on that a couple months ago, and then re-suggested this as a topic for the show around the most appropriate time. So
Yeah.
I'll let her tell us where Valentine's Day came from.
So I was living in Bolivia in 2013, and suddenly all the children in the school I was working in went crazy about St. Valentine's Day. And I was, oh, right, St. Valentine's Day happens every year. Why? Why does this happen every year? Where does it come from? So I, just for fun, did some research on the internet and found that apparently over 2,000 years ago, Romans had a lot of fun around this time. They wanted to celebrate that spring was going to come at some point, and that fertility was the most important thing. You know, like women had to get pregnant, the fields had to become more fertile, full of grain, just cows and all other domestic animals had to just give birth, like, like there was no tomorrow.
Yeah, we need some more cow babies.
Oh
yeah, just let's just fill the earth with babies. That was their philosophy, which we still keep apparently. Anyway, and basically imagine several groups of aristocratic adolescents being sent out into the mountains for a couple of weeks, or several weeks actually, to live in the wilderness. And when they were ready, which was approaching the 15th of February, which was, Romans thought that the 15th of each month was the most powerfully charged day. And that's when they had like all their...
Ides of February.
Yeah, the Ides of February, the Ides of March. Every month apparently has an Ides. It's not just March that's got an Ides. It's, June, August, May. They've all got Ides.
Yep. Even September?
Yep. Even September.
I would say so, yeah.
Oh my God.
Although I guess did August exist on the calendar at that point in time, like in the Caesarian age? Because August was named after Augustus Caesar, so was July.
It probably didn't.
So there may not have been an Ides of August. Now you know.
Wow.
Yep.
So on or near the Ides of February, what happened? What did all these young people have gone into the wilderness? They're, living like hippies off in the mountains, doing Zeus knows what.
Proto-hippies.
The idea is that they would live like wolves, because as you know, the patron spirit of Rome was the she-wolf, right?
Yes, I knew that.
Suckled their founders. So they wanted to become inspired or whatever by the spirit of the wolf, of the she-wolf. And then they would sacrifice a ram. I think that's how it's called in English.
Yeah.
A ram and a dog, cover themselves in the blood, cut strips of fur from each animal, soak them in the blood, and then run down back to the city, just whipping everything and everyone they met on their way. And whoever was whipped and received part of that blood would become, especially the women, they would become particularly fertile at that point.
I feel like this is a metal music video waiting to happen.
It sounds pretty hardcore, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty metal, yeah.
And then, after that, after the festival started, because it was a week-long festival, young unmarried people would get together randomly in pairs, male and female, and they would become partners for the whole celebration. Mm-hmm. And engage in everything: dance, food, orgies, things that the Romans used to do.
The usual.
Yeah, the normal.
And some of them got married afterwards. Like there were several pregnancies. Nobody knew who the father was, but anyway, Romans.
Yeah. It doesn't matter because kids were happening, right?
Yeah, it's like
The point was
children.
kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like let's just
We don't
honor
care where they
life.
come from. Let's just make them happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And diversity. Who cares about like pure
Right.
blood and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how they say that fatherhood is an act of faith.
Yeah. I haven't heard that one.
No, you
That's
haven't.
not an American saying, but I love it.
My children, like that's why men make their children have their surname just in case.
Oh, I see. 'Cause otherwise they're like,
Once again,
I'm not your son.
I don't have to do what you say.
Yeah.
yeah.
You don't owe me. Yeah.
Okay, so imagine this panorama of like blood and orgies and
Mhm.
stuff
I'm with you so far.
happening,
Right.
Yeah. happening all the way into the 5th century of the current era.
Mm.
And Catholicism rising, well, Christianity rising, and the particular Roman branch of Catholicism rising, and going like, oh my God, Jesus wouldn't have approved of that. We would never know. Probably he would. But let's not get into that.
He was a pretty easygoing guy. Guy.
Yeah. So basically, it was abolished for I don't know how many hundreds of years.
Mhm.
But then at some point, it became it wasn't enough to abolish it, as the church often does. They had to rebrand it somehow, like appropriate the festival and make it Christian. So they said, okay, let's look at which Christian martyrs are available that were born or lived or died around the 14th of February. And they found 3 men who were all called Valentine, of whose historical origin is dubious. We don't know if they really existed. That's why they're not considered saints anymore by the Catholic Church.
But don't we still have like the skull of one of them in a cathedral somewhere?
We do,
That
but
could
it
be
can be the
anybody's
skull of
skull.
whoever.
Yeah, you don't know where that
Yeah.
skull came from.
I mean,
Just find skulls everywhere. They're just laying around in the past.
yeah, I mean, when I went to the Czech Republic, there is
I've been
a
there.
mausoleum. You've been to Kutna Hora?
Yeah, the Austria. Yeah, it was amazing.
It's amazing. They have pyramids made of bones and skulls. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I was like, where did these bones come from? Apparently there was like this outburst of the plague at some point in the 1600s or something, and they didn't know what to do with all the bones.
All these bones. What do we do?
Yeah,
Build a
like,
church.
what shall we do with them? Shall we bury them? No, let's make art.
That's pretty metal as well.
Yeah, it was amazing. Wow. Like it was cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Anyway,
bone piles just everywhere.
So we're in the 5th century, and Lupercalia, which is the name of this Roman holiday with the blood and the young men and the whipping and the lots of orgies. Lupercalia is still around, but Christianity is a lot stronger than the Roman Empire, and these old traditions are being displaced. So they just picked one of the saints.
Yeah, one who apparently with young couples in secret.
Oh,
that's why they chose him. Although. Whatever.
As the legend goes, it was like hard times for the Roman Empire, and the emperor at the time was like, we can't have men marrying, that makes them weak, it takes them away from being soldiers for the empire and stuff. And Saint Valentine was like, no, but love should conquer all, and I'm going to marry people. And
he got killed as a result.
Yeah, they hanged him or something.
They probably crucified him. Because that's what Romans
That's how they killed everybody?
Not everybody, but when they wanted to set an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where
does Cupid come in all this?
Cupid
being
Cupid is the Roman deity. Is the Roman version of Eros.
Sure.
The son of Venus, the goddess of love and beauty and stuff.
Yeah.
So of course,
I'm curious that we've taken this Roman tradition, we've appropriated it to make it more Christian, and then we brought back in more Roman symbolism.
Yeah, more of the pagan. Yeah.
Probably probably different wheeze going on in there. Just
Nope, it was all me. It was me the whole time.
okay.
I'm all up for bringing back the pagan part of Lupercalia.
I am too. I think particularly the blood whipping part. I think that would definitely go viral on YouTube. Be good for some.
I'll give you that.
Good for some BuzzFeed revenue or something. Yeah. So, but when did we get this sort of modern association of it being for lovers or like a lovers' holiday? Because it sounds like it was just like, okay, it's this Saint's Day, but that doesn't sound like something that would be celebrated very widely.
Yeah. Well, so once the church had established that day as Saint Valentine's Day, of course, no one celebrated anything on that day. But then this British poet, Chaucer, I think I pronounced his name correctly, wrote a poem. Wrote a poem that became very popular, where he was talking about how little birds get together to celebrate their love on St. Valentine's Day. And everybody was like, wow, that's such a great idea. Let's do like the birds. Only that on the 14th of February, birds are hiding away because it's bloody cold, especially in England. Yeah. So apparently there was another St. Valentine's in the calendar in like further on in March or April, which makes much more sense that birds would come out to mate when it's warmer, because otherwise their offspring would die.
Yeah.
But hey, I don't know, just a suggestion. So anyway, people were like, oh, we need to celebrate this somehow. And that poem just became the symbol of chivalrous love, of you have to go and woo the lady, and the lady just acts all stupid and like, oh, you're so cute. But in truth, she's thinking, anyway, just get real. So what happened after that? So that was for like around 500 years, because that was in 1370, in the 1370s.
Chaucer? Yeah, Chaucer was 1300s?
Yeah, something like that. So then we go back
let's say
to...
Yes.
Yeah, then we go all the way across the Atlantic, 500 years later, to the US. Of course, because all these ideas originate in the United States for some reason. And there was this woman living in Tennessee who decided to start giving out cards, producing cards to give out on Valentine's Day. Like she would hand paint them and sell them. And when that started, a book was written giving advice to young men on how to write Valentine's notes to their beloved girlfriends or wives or women who did not pay them any attention. And it became a thing. It became so popular that we're still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That was how many years ago?
That was in the 1800s.
In the 1800s.
Yeah, late 1800s.
And you know, anything that's older than 100 years might as well just have been going on forever. as we...
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the last name of the name of our last one was what? Destroy the Past? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, how do we get from the cards to giving flowers or
I blame
wine
Hallmark.
or chocolates? Hallmark.
Yeah. Everything's Hallmark's fault.
Well, in a way, I feel that it was an attempt to resuscitate the pagan origin. Not that people thought of it that way, of course, but flowers are a very pagan symbol for fertility and beauty. If you think about Christianity in general, especially the Puritan side that got to the US, everything was very simple. It was very black and white. Flowers? What? No, maybe if someone died, but that was it, you know. So the giving of flowers, the color red, all those things were clearly in opposition to the aesthetic that was popular really back then, even in Europe, if you think about it.
Right. So at some point, you know, the demand for flowers kind of outstripped the supply from the local areas in Europe.
Capitalism to the rescue.
And then right around the time that global international and intercontinental trade was coming to the rise. So what happened as a result of that? Where did people start getting their flowers from? around this time of the year?
Well, I would say, of course, first of all, what flowers do people choose to give on St. Valentine's Day?
Oh, well, a dozen rosés, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Roses
bit.
and maybe carnations if you're less lucky, but roses are considered to be more elegant and passionate and whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, the name
Thanks, marketing.
carnation is more. It talks even more of the pleasures of the flesh and stuff. Hence the name.
Oh,
So,
carnation.
Oh. Yeah, you know all those Latin words.
It's about that carne asada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but they are very European flowers. They were flowers that could easily be found. Like you can even find wild rose bushes everywhere, and they're not as glamorous and flashy as the cultivated ones, but still.
They'll do the trick.
Yeah, they'll do the trick. So people associated St. Valentine's with roses and to a lesser extent carnations. But of course, producing flowers requires a lot of very good soil, a lot of water, and a lot of forced labor.
Oh.
So of course we have a problem in Europe and the United States because we don't have we don't have enough immigrant workers to work on the flower plantations. So what do?
We outsource.
We outsource them. To where? Where do we outsource them?
To that place that everybody thinks is a country, but is actually starts with an A. Always forget about
Antarctica.
Antarctica. That's it. That one.
Right. Great for growing roses.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So basically, good climate, enough water, good soil, very few labor regulations, and a lot of government pressure, and probably a civil war or two. Yeah, Africa.
Yeah.
Perfect place to grow cut flowers. Not that they need the food, like who cares if we use the best soil available to grow flowers.
So nowadays it's primarily what, Ethiopia and Kenya are the big producers.
Mostly Kenya, then Ethiopia, South Africa to an extent.
South Africa.
Yeah. I will point out that's for the European side. North America gets most of ours from South America.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of the, at least in recent years, a lot of the flowers the U.S. receives come from Africa as well.
No, I'll have to check my sources. There was a Planet Money episode about this a few months ago, and I don't remember what they said.
Oh well, we'll link to that as well. But basically, we're putting a lot of pressure on not the areas that actually consume these things, which is, I mean, this is endemic, right? Our food supply is this way. Our consumer products are this way, and why wouldn't our weird discombobulated reassembled hybrid traditional holidays be this way, right? And the things we get for them.
But I mean, at least food you can understand, like, okay, there are things that you can't produce in a colder climate or whatever, but can we just analyze the life cycle of a flower?
Yeah, how long? So what are we talking? Like, do flowers last like a couple of weeks, or like at their peak? Let's say I'm just a good good American late 20s guy. I'm maybe work in a library. I haven't had too much romantic success in my life. I haven't looked too deeply into things, but I can get by.
Then you go on OkCupid.
I go on OkCupid and I find a nice young woman who looks great. We go on a couple of dates, and then Valentine's Day rolls around, and it's like, well, we haven't been dating for too long, but this is a big step. I could give her flowers, right? And I go down to the stand, on the street, and I pick up a dozen roses, and they smell great and they look great, and they're wrapped nicely, and I walk away. How long had those flowers been in there, and when were they picked, and how long will they last after I give them away?
Well, most flowers, they are, I don't know how long it takes for them to bloom, and I don't know how many days it takes for them to go from, let's say, Kenya to London.
Probably
whatever.
Doesn't Kenya have an airport?
Oh yeah,
dedicated to...
at the terminal of the Nairobi airport is dedicated to exporting flowers, which is ridiculous.
An entire terminal.
But I know that flower shops receive flowers daily.
daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You have
they
to
don't
get
they
'em-
don't have a big shelf life.
Yeah, about 24 hours,
Wow.
48 maybe.
And what happens to
Yeah.
the ones that aren't sold?
Well,
Other
that's a
products
big
are
problem.
Yeah.
That's a big problem that Planet Money was dealing with, and I'm really having difficult finding the episode specifically. I found references to it, but they were talking about the problems with it is, and they were looking specifically at Ecuadorian flowers. I did find that reference. And the fact that they have to ship them incredibly fast to get them anywhere, or it's just lost money. And that Valentine's Day is really their biggest day of the entire year, which causes all sorts of problems because that it's a cash crop that's not good year round. If I make too much corn this year, I can store a lot of it and have it next year. Same thing for grain. Same thing for a lot of food staples, and make up that shortfall. But the price of a bouquet of roses is cut in half on February 15th. The entire market collapses after that point, with small changes. But it's really interesting it's a crop that makes so much money, but only in these very, very specific situations and circumstances.
So I'm curious what sort of the ethical considerations are here, right? Like this is sort of, it ties into other stuff we've been talking about, and maybe other topics we've touched on the show, which is what are the unintended consequences of a tradition, right? Of something that you just sort of do because it's expected in society, and what sort of impacts, positive or negative, is it actually having, not only near you but far away. And so something I'm curious about, Kevin, is how this relates to your stance on tipping in restaurants, which I've written about and have an opinion about.
Yeah, I feel like we must have talked about it at some point in time, but I and other people who have studied this certainly question or are outright in favor of destroying the practice of tipping at restaurants, because it perpetuates a lot of problems, from not being able to pay your workers a fair wage, to unfairly lowering the total cost of your food, to just having a significant economic detriment overall, not being able to guarantee a living wage for people, all that sort of stuff. When we were talking about this episode, we actually just like, Kevin, you asked me, Kevin, do you still not tip? And I actually said, well, I never didn't tip. And I make a point of doing it now because if I'm at that restaurant with that tacit agreement of I'm paying this waiters or waitresses for their time, like directly. And as much as I hate that to be the case, there's not really a way to avoid that unless I'm intentionally going to a restaurant that does not deal with that. Whereas in something like I can choose to not buy flowers because of all of the terrible conditions in which they're created, but I haven't already implicitly agreed to that by walking into a florist's, if that makes sense.
I see.
So there's a certain amount of emotional distance and agreement that's been made that is easier to break.
I guess so. Like and this was the weird thing to me, is like when you're in a restaurant, right? Say you don't agree. Let's just take, in both situations, we agree that the practice is not good for the people giving the service.
For anybody. I'm for anybody.
Right. Yeah, it's a bad practice for the system.
Yeah.
But the strategy for like how do you begin to change that, right? If there's an is to an ought there, right? Well, it is this way, it ought to be this way. The strategy in capitalism is vote with your feet, right? So if you don't walk into
your
wallet,
or both,
right? Yeah. With your wallet, if you don't buy flowers, that sends kind of this anonymous demand signal up the stream somewhere that flowers aren't really in demand. Some bean counter looks at, wow, numbers are down, people aren't buying as much, maybe we shouldn't plant as much next year, and then so you have this sort of negative feedback loop where the whole system, or positive feedback loop in the negative direction, where the system eventually declines. In a restaurant situation, though, you have this like counteractive measure where like it's this social proximity, right? Like, have you felt like when you go into a restaurant, you feel the waiter knows like if you don't tip, right?
Yeah, well, even if I don't know, like typically not tipping can be a quote unquote safe experience because it usually happens after you leave. Which is sort of a politeness thing about it, is you can get away with it. Which is all part of the whole social structure there. But they remember, and you have directly impacted somebody's day negatively. You have caused harm to almost. I'm comfortable almost saying, and that's because tipping is so ingrained and so expected, and the laws are such in the U.S. that you can get away without paying people because of tips. That there's this sort of reinforcement of it within that system, short of not going out to eat or not eating at places where tipping is part of that culture. There are a couple places here in Austin, Black Star Co-op. I know you went there when you lived here in Austin, Stephen. They don't allow tipping, and they pay their staff a fair wage. And there are places like that, and there's more and more of those, but there's not enough of those. So
right.
I
don't see that catching on, right? I don't see more restaurants going, oh yeah, we're a living wage restaurant.
Short of things like fast casual restaurants or fast food outright, where that's never been a part of that culture. And why is it okay to tip someone who brings me fried chicken livers, but not someone who brings me fried chicken McNuggets? One of those is okay to tip, and one of those isn't.
And see, this is where I would be curious to just ask someone in Ecuador or Kenya or Ethiopia, wherever these flowers are coming from. How do you feel if I don't buy the flowers that you picked, right? Like,
yeah,
and they're probably like, that's great. That I don't know. I'm speculating here, but
well, so
on a couple of accounts that I saw, it's like the labor conditions are terrible.
They are. Yeah, it's to me, it's one of those things that this is the not double-edged sword, because I don't like that phrase anymore, but it's sort of the argument in favor of it is like, oh, well, we're creating these jobs, as if for somehow these people wouldn't be able to find doing other sorts of work or be productive in other ways. Is it the right kind of job is just as important to me as is it a fair job? If we wouldn't pay someone what we put someone through what they do in our country, what they go through in Kenya, Ecuador, Ethiopia, why would we do it if we can't see it? Why does that make it okay?
Well, it's a very effective marketing campaign. It's like,
oh, sure,
give this flowers, and actually that's why I wanted to analyze the life cycle of a flower, and that's why we were saying, this is like giving someone a dozen zombies, because the flowers
watch this die.
So the flower isn't alive because it's been cut, but it's not completely dead yet. It's not completely, I don't know, the petals aren't falling apart, but clearly it's this thing in between that is very much kept alive by all the chemicals that have gone into it. And all those chemicals are handled by people that have no job security, that are not really properly protected to handle those things. I mean, there's a reason why we don't produce flowers like that in Europe and the US.
It's almost like
you wouldn't be able to pay for them.
Yeah, we can't pay people to do it.
Yeah, it almost the analogy is like, think of it as if this flower is a living being, right? And the flowering stage of a plant is like when it's at its most fertile. It's like the bloom.
It's ready to make flower babies.
Yeah.
Right. It's when it's ready to reproduce. So it's like the point, like a person in their adolescence, or like a dog or a cat in their prime, right? And you're killing it at that point, pumping it full of preservatives and giving it to another person. What? Like, if someone did that with a dog, with a puppy or a cat, like, we'd be horrified, right?
Yeah, but I mean, flowers, who cares? We don't even see how they're produced. People don't even think about it. Why don't we just give plants to one another or seeds to one another? Why do we give the flowers It's like, I
They're pretty.
wish that you're fertile, like really fertile this year or at this point in your life, but then 2 days later you're going to wither and die.
Yeah.
I hope that you
Basically.
have a really beautiful short existence. What?
Yeah. Although, have y'all heard? And this is just something that occurred to me. I'm looking it up on the wikis right now. I'm posting a link to it. Have y'all ever heard about this thing called the language of flowers? Which was
It sounds familiar, but
it's got I only know a little bit about it, but the idea was that you would use flowers to send covert messages between people. So you could either send the actual flower, or you could send pictures of the flower or cards, and you could they could code the message to the recipient, allowing the sender to express feelings which could not be spoken aloud in Victorian society. So it's this really sort of fascinating thing that I think ties into this, albeit obliquely, because the only meaning that we give to flowers now is rose equals love, poinsettias for Christmas, and is it lilies when somebody dies? Am I getting that right? I don't know.
Yeah.
And so it's like I've only got 3 words in this language, but apparently there was a lot more going on at one point in time. And I'm curious if that
number of flowers as well would have an impact, and like maybe how they were arranged.
Number, the arrangement, the different types, mixing and matching. So rose next to a bluebonnet would have a different meaning than a rose next to orchid of some sort, and these sorts of things, which language fascinates me just in general.
It is fascinating. To me, I just think, wow, another way that the Victorians ruined everything.
Yeah, they did that. They did that a lot.
At least the Victorians probably used like local flowers.
Probably. That's
which is another thing that I was looking at while I was researching this. It's South Africa is trying to create a demand for, okay, still we can produce flowers, but how about we export our flowers that do not require so many resources to be produced?
Yeah, I saw that using natural, which will of course require lots and lots of marketing.
Yeah, well, what Stephen described earlier, like, if you don't walk into a flower shop, then you send this message down the line, and the demand will decrease. That doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Because the demand is fabricated.
Yes. Which I loved the video that you posted earlier, Anna, about engagement rings.
Yeah.
I've only recently become aware of the diamond cartel that is De Beers, and that video you posted from Adam Ruins Everything, which, by the way, I spent all of this morning watching every video I could find of that, because that show is amazing.
Yes.
But sort of speaks to that and sort of the power of marketing in this capitalistic, not true supply and demand world, where we created the value of diamonds out of nothing. And I say we, meaning De Beers, and they still have no intrinsic value. They have the purpose that diamonds can serve is one of an industrial sort of mining use, not of, oh, look, this is a pretty rock. And I get even more angry about it now, because you see things like chocolate diamonds are really big right now, or just I'm seeing a lot of ads for them, which are diamonds that 30 years ago we would have disposed of for being too impure, and they're being the most common type. They're brown. They're not clear. They're brown. But now we've remarketed them as something to buy for yourself, rather than waiting for him to buy them for you. Him being in this, and it's 100% like, you can look it up. It's gross.
That's messed up.
It's gross. It makes me mad. But brown diamonds are
as long as you continue buying stuff, like, who cares what?
Once again, we get back to, oh man, global finance capitalism ruins everything.
Yeah.
But really, I want to get back to like the theory of change model, right? Like, what is it really for something like flowers or tipping, right? What is what is it that an individual can do in their own buying habits, speaking habits, whatever, that
I think it's
to remedy the situation?
Yeah, personally, I think it's it's what we're doing. It's sort of this counter capitalism, this counter marketing thing, is talk about it, speak up about it, and have that conversation, ask the questions. And we've seen, here in the U.S., we've seen the power of people speaking out against things. You can look at something like Bernie Sanders' campaign, who has managed to. The U.S. election is really big right now. I don't know if y'all know that in Canada.
Oh yeah, I'm listening to the NPR news every few days or so.
We can't stop talking.
And they the Canadians even can't stop talking about it. Okay. They're like more into it than we are.
I find that hard to believe.
Okay, sorry, I'm not Canadian.
Because it's just such a spectacle, It's like the World Cup of politics or something.
It certainly is. Well, one of the big stories in this narrative that is the U.S. presidential election in 2016 is that of Bernie Sanders, who has basically rejected all corporate financing and corporate money, and is subsisting entirely on individual donations from relatively small sizes of individual donations, and is raising millions of dollars because of that. And so the idea that we can use sort of our individual speaking power and by sharing a message that we believe in, make larger change kind of gives me like hope that can happen. Whereas every other candidate short of Donald Trump is supported by a super PAC with nearly potentially unlimited funds. Donald Trump doesn't have to do that because he's independently wealthy, which is to say he's really good at blowing his daddy's money.
Yeah.
And that it's fascinating to see that aspect of it.
Yeah, I'm really hardened by we've talked politics occasionally on Bad Philosophy, so this isn't out of bounds. I'm hardened by the Bernie Sanders movement and how he really went from like, my Facebook feeds were all were full of Bernie Sanders like a year ago, before you ever started hearing about him talked about on with any seriousness, even on NPR, right? Even on the quote unquote liberal media, right? Yeah. It was Hillary, and then it's been really interesting to hear the narrative change. It's like they're begrudgingly talking about Bernie Sanders, and they're still trying.
I guess we can't ignore him yet.
Yeah.
But why is that? Is it because Hillary is a woman?
I think just because she was anointed, right, by that side, right, as this is the person. We had Bill Clinton.
She was supposed to be running unopposed. Where the party had basically decided that Hillary would be the candidate, and because she is very much an establishment candidate, whatever that means, but she takes money from people like Goldman Sachs. She takes her cues from the Democratic Party's leadership at large. And that's exactly what the party as an organization wants out of a candidate. They want someone to perpetuate these systems.
Yeah.
And so being able to find someone.
Woman, then you win part of like, people might think that she's a feminist, and
they might get confused.
Hillary
Clinton does not have what I would call a great feminist track record.
Of course she does.
That's in the same way that I can be a man and a feminist, she can be a woman and not really a feminist.
Oh yeah, definitely. Right. And sexism is perpetuated mostly by women. Let's not forget that.
Well, that's because we created a society where we've said the only way you can succeed as a woman is to kill all the women around you.
No, and behave like a very particular type of man.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yes. Although there is sadly a group of a relatively small vocal group of what have been dubbed the Bernie Bros, who don't talk policy or debate, but basically just hate Hillary because she's a woman, which is the Gamergate of this political season, if you ask me. Which is to say, it's a relatively small group of people making too much noise, and we should just ignore.
Yeah. That's the thing is these tiny things get blown up by that weird apparatus of the internet and the media.
And also what people choose to pay attention to.
Yeah,
really.
Absolutely.
It brings us back to this whole topic. Yeah. It's like this is a huge thing. This is a huge industry. Mm-hmm. This is a tradition. It's these unseen things in our lives, right? That I'm going to buy flowers for Valentine's Day. It's just, and you don't even give it a second thought about where the flowers come from.
Yeah.
But it's these little things that like have no impact whatsoever, actually, that you spend all your time thinking about. Wow, the media has made such a mess of this age. to use.
Yeah, well,
a friend of mine.
and we're seeing ways to change that now. The younger generation, I say, as I'm closer to 30 than I've ever been before, and the kids these days don't watch the media. They watch the YouTubes. That's where they interact with everything, and they live in a different sphere. That's always been the case, but it's fascinating to me to see that how much that's growing and how much that is being adjusted by the new mainstream or what is becoming mainstream. You know, in 20 years, the John Green, Hank Green empire is going to be fascinating.
Right.
And CNN will be talked about in the way newspapers are talked about today. That old slow media that gets to things, if they cover anything, talks about it 2 days later and ignores what really matters.
So you think like, and maybe we've talked about this on the show before, but something like the Hank and John Green, you know, they could become huge political forces, right? In basically,
I think they are.
Yeah.
I just think their audience hasn't yet hit voting age.
So I personally, from the sidelines of this, I saw a lot of YouTube get bought, right? Like basically become the media, right? They got all the old media, you know, the Comcasts and the Viacoms and all of these basically started up, you know, little YouTube studios spin-off things that they owned. And so they brought,
and most of them failed.
Really? So where does that stand now? Like where's the revenue coming from for these?
Some of it is ad revenue, which is a problem. Patreon has been huge. Subscription models, there's a lot of different things. But so, for example, Geek and Sundry was one of those that came out as a YouTube studio. And they got this massive funding for their first year and then got zero funding after that. They cut all the funding for a lot of those channels. And Geek and Sundry shrunk, but they have still been successful. They they Indiegogo'd a season of tabletop.
Indie went? I don't. How do you?
They crowdfunded a season of tabletop. A lot of the stuff that they're doing is being independently funded. They've gotten sponsorship deals, things like that to stay active. And those are the ones that have survived, are the ones that are easily filmed, can be shot, you know, more or less in somebody's bedroom, and are not being restricted by the lack of money.
I see.
You know, the YouTube Studios thing funneled a boatload of money into channels and said, well, this is how we funded TV for years, is we throw tons of money at it and we keep throwing money at the things that are successful. But we didn't know how to judge what was successful, and throwing more money at a thing did not make it more successful on YouTube.
Right.
And so the people who are successful, Hank and John Green started, and are still successful, but started recording a video message to each other once a week. That was all it was, in their bedroom and doing some editing. And they're still one of the most powerful groups, the Nerd Fighters. That's the group. I know these names. And still have a ton of cultural cachet, and I think that's only growing. And they could cut everything else. You know, John would still write books, Hank would do whatever he does, and send video messages to each other once a week, which they still do. And that would be sufficient. Like, they would still have an audience. They've been able to grow because their audience has grown, but they don't have to. And the cost of entry is getting lower and lower all the time. You know, the fact that we've been doing this podcast for 8 years or 7 years, however long it's been, and it has cost us almost nothing, is pretty impressive.
True. I have started to think about, though, like, what are, in the same way that there's sort of this unseen apparatus of the flower industry right behind this thing that seems very easy to do. Oh, just buy flowers, you know. What are kind of the unseen apparatus behind, you know, what you said, that low cost of entry, you know, us being able to do, look at the tools we're using, right? We're using Google, and more Google, right? which is also this huge global apparatus of, you know, using power, and of course all of the servers, right, that are running all of this video stream right now are using rare earth minerals mined under terrible conditions in third world country, not third world, developing countries.
Please.
Which I also have a.
Racist.
Can we talk about that briefly? Like, I don't think either term actually is good, because developing implies that there's some sort of thing to develop toward, right?
It implies a certain path of progress. Yes.
Right. So what should we call these places?
Oh my God, you're bringing me back to my
Exploited?
college years.
Exploited
Exploited?
places?
Well,
You got 2 masters in this.
yeah.
You should know the answer, right?
The byproducts of colonialism?
Well, who is labeling? Who is doing the labeling here?
Exactly.
We are.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what parameters are you comparing here? Is our economy more developed, as in is there more money? Are there more resources going back and forth? Is there more opportunity, whatever that means? I mean, we could just go into the deconstruction of the whole text behind this, right?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's have fun.
We've got 12 minutes left. We can do this.
Okay.
But if you, there's a very good book that I don't know if either of you have read. It's called The Open Veins of Latin America.
Nope. I probably
Very good,
should, but I haven't.
By Eduardo Galeano. Very good book. He was from Uruguay. He died last. And basically he was criticizing how, of course, Europe and the US and the rest of the global economy is what it is, mostly because of all the wealth that the Spanish stole from South America.
Yay, colonialism.
Yeah, but even beyond colonialism, like, how do we continue that colonialism today? It's not that because those countries have become independent that they are less subservient to any of this.
Right.
So how do they call themselves? How, if we were to ask them to describe their economy or their culture, of course they're not less developed, in the same way that a child is not less developed in his or her personality to an adult.
Yeah.
They're just still trying to figure out how to make their body do what they want to do. But we are all the time watching and observing and analyzing the world from the white male adult perspective, and of a middle class to wealthy perspective as well. Because if you ask the poor, if you ask a person who has no access to resources in, I don't know, New York City, what are they going to say? Oh yeah, I live in a very developed economy, but I have no access to it, so
so I might as well not.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very deep.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, I just want to say that I think, and this may just be a difference of how we use the word. When I use colonialism, and I use it somewhat maybe haphazardly, but I use it knowing full well that that's not a thing that has ended. The idea of being in a post-colonial world is inaccurate at best, and we are still feeling the long fingers of that in everything, and it hasn't gone away at all. And I make light of it, if only to normalize it, as to sort of make that awareness sort of a given, that we are aware of it and making changes of it, because we have to talk about it. That's what we're talking about right now, is how do we change the things? Is we have to make them known, we have to talk about them. So I agree 100% with what you said.
So this Valentine's, maybe we should bring it to a wrap up. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing host stuff. Sorry.
It's okay. We're gonna end the episode in 30 seconds. Go.
Go. This Valentine's Day, don't buy flowers. Make a gift for somebody, or just hug them a lot.
Yeah.
And tell them how much you love them.
Or the option I always gave, because I had a lot of friends in college who liked to do grand romantic gestures on Valentine's Day. Sometimes to people that they weren't even dating, like trying to do the whole romantic comedy, which could be a whole other episode, romantic comedy style of like knocking on your door and holding up a sign or a boombox or whatever. Don't do it on Valentine's Day. Pick any other day of the year.
No, just do it every day of the year. How about that?
Yeah. Grand romantic gestures are even worse on Valentine's Day.
Setting yourself up to fail there, right? Yeah.
I'm thinking for our next Valentine's Day episode, we should talk about the sexism of thinking that men have to do it all the time and getting like really uncomfortable when they receive flowers or things like that.
Oh, well, you just did. So.
I just did.
We've got a whole episode on that. Romantic comedies. We could go for decades.
We could just keep this thing going till we fall off the stem, as it were.
But I guess I would just say that be a bit more conscious of why you do what you do. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that you are exempt of using your brain to think, wait, so why am I doing this again? Do I really want to do this? Because most of the time you don't even want to do it. It doesn't make you happy. The other person doesn't really feel flowers don't make me happy. Seeing flowers in a field does, but getting a bouquet of flowers doesn't. Because then I have to throw them away when they die. And I think, oh, that was a waste of money. Never mind everything I know about how they're produced.
Yeah. I think there's one more point here, which we've been dancing around, but we may have never said, which may have been better, but whatever, is that there's something we want to preserve around this time, right? There's something we were celebrating. There's something the Romans were celebrating in the first place. Fertility, love, connection, something about this time of year.
Joy, really, like joy in the middle of the winter.
Right. Yeah. And let's think again about we do value those things. And what are ways, if we were to just invent a holiday now that celebrated those things, what would it look like? Let's kind of think about what is meaningful to us now to celebrate there. What would Valentine's Day look like or not Valentine's Day? What would a spring ritual look like if it were invented now? February 14th, 2016. Without just lazily appropriating everything that already exists.
It's like, how do you? Well, I'm going to counter that, Stephen, and say, how do you remove the history? How do we create something new that's not in conversation with everything that's come before?
I don't think that my statement is exclusive, but yeah, like it would have to, of course, address what already exists, but just like this episode did, use that as a jumping off point, rather than just saying, no, we don't want to do all that. It's like, okay, we acknowledge that this is a thing. What parts of this do we want to keep? What's the essence of it? And then use that as a seed for what comes next. Yeah.
Can we just not do it on Twitter?
Well, maybe that's another episode.
Have you tweeted yet? Yeah. Have you tweeted yet, Anna? I know that you.
I'm following you on Twitter, but I haven't.
I saw. I'm excited about that. I don't tweet anything worthwhile. I don't think I tweet anything worthwhile. It's been a while. I'm mostly lurking on Twitter, but I do tweet at least once a week or so. So, that's a thing. Yeah. Stephen doesn't tweet, so you don't have to feel like you have to. It's okay.
I do.
Stephen, you auto-tweet your things you post on Instagram with Barton.
And I retweet that philosophy.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Well, okay. I'll
you have to cultivate an audience to keep it active. Probably.
Nah, I mean, most people are pretty lazy when it comes to the people they follow. So I think I'm still coasting off the ASL followers.
Oh, there you
go. Should we wrap this up?
Yeah. So episode's over. Bye, everybody.
Woo!
Or for real. It's like, I'm in charge. The power. No, thank both of you for being on the show with me. I've had a lot of fun. I know sometimes I feel like we just scratch the surface of these topics, but luckily there's plenty of links we're going to post in the show notes for you to sort of expand your mind and go further down this rabbit hole with us. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Bad Philosophy. You can find us on Facebook, which I have mixed feelings about already, at facebook.com/Bad Philosophy. Although know that if you follow us on Facebook, you probably won't see us tweet about this unless you intentionally go to that website, because Facebook gates all of our posts unless we pay them money to boost them to the people who actually chose to follow us. So, there's that.
Facebook.
Yeah. But Twitter, if you follow us on Twitter, you'll see everything we post, because that's how Twitter works for now. I'm Kevin Saunders. You can always follow me at Twitter at KevSond. Stephen Torrence, you're at...
I'm at Torrence, STORRENCE.
I'm also like the way you say it. That's why.
I'm also in various places on the internet as Eco-Texan, spelled just like it sounds.
Yeah. TECHSAN.
That one. Yep.
Anna, thank you again for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. I know you have a Twitter account. You don't have to share it. It's not like you do anything with it.
But we will be including, if it's found, we will be including a presentation that Anna created herself. It is in Spanish.
No, it's in English, actually.
Oh, it's in English.
Yeah.
Okay. So
even better.
Even better. On this very topic. And
convenient.
Because she really did a lot more research on it than me.
We should have just shut up the entire... Yeah, we should have just shut up the whole episode and let her talk, and then that would have been everything. That would have been way easier.
Definitely. Can you just like do all of the episodes from here on out?
Sure.
That'd be great.
Can I do them in Spanish?
Yeah.
Yep.
Or in
I don't
French?
mind. Yeah. As far as I know, our audience speaks French and Spanish. I have no evidence to say otherwise.
Do you want to maybe like wrap up the episode in Spanish? Are you okay with that, Kevin,
sure.
Mr. Host?
By all means. I wasn't doing a very good job, so you might as well try.
No, I mean just the last part. The sign off.
What do I have to say?
You can say whatever you'd like, because probably we won't.
We won't know.
Okay, but what do you normally do when you wrap up an episode?
I don't know. Make it up.
Okay.
It's bad philosophy.
It's bad philosophy.
I don't listen to this show. I don't know what we normally say.
Okay. Básicamente, no compréis flores. Si queréis demostrar vuestro amor para las personas que os rodean, hacedlo todos los días del año. Y si queréis dar un paso más, simplemente sed útiles para las personas a vuestro alrededor. Y escuchad Bad Philosophy.
I heard don't buy flowers and listen to Bad Philosophy. That's all I got. I'm sure the rest of it was very important as well.
I'll get you the subtitles.
Yeah.
Adios, amigos.
Toodaloo.
Bye-bye.
Bye.